He was the golden boy. I was the weird kid. 10 years later, he asked me for money, and never left. In high school, Derek was the kind of guy who got picked first without even showing up. Quarterback. Prom king. The guy who could throw a football and a wink with the same level of confidence. He had that loud, casual charm that made teachers smile at him even when he didn't do homework. His dad was a former coach. His mom ran the PTA. People said things like, "He's going places," and "He's got that spark." I lived 4 houses down. My parents were kind but tired. My dad fixed heating units. My mom stocked pharmacy shelves overnight. We didn't host barbecues. We didn't have a fire pit. We had a rusted swing in the backyard and a garage full of tools I wasn't allowed to touch. I didn't get invited to things. Or if I did, it was through someone else's pity. I'd show up and spend most of the time pretending to text someone. I was the kid teacher said was very bright, in that tone that meant, but not popular. I wore the same jeans until they frayed, used my brother's hand-me-down sneakers, and got called Space Boy, because I drew rocket diagrams in the margins of my notebooks. I wasn't bullied, not like in movies. I was the warm-up joke. The one they poked just to get the room loose. Derek didn't invent it, but he sharpened it. Relax, he's not gonna shoot up the school. He probably just wants to build it better. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. That was the rule, if you laugh, it doesn't hurt. What made it worse was that we grew up close, same bus stop, same street light. Our moms were friends until they weren't. We played on the same little league team when we were 10. He even came to my house once for a sleepover. We watched cartoons and ate too much popcorn. He told me I was funny. For a second, I thought maybe we'd be real friends. Then middle school happened. Then Clara. Clara was our neighbor. Lived in the gray house with the blue shutters. She had a golden retriever and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. I loved her the way kids love, all in, all quiet. I once wrote her a Valentine's card and never gave it to her. Just held it in my backpack for weeks until the edges curled. By 9th grade, she was hanging off Derek's arm at football games. By 10th, they were making out in the hallway like no one else existed. She barely looked at me. And why would she? I had braces and a cowlick and a stutter when I got nervous. Derek had cheekbones and confidence, and people saying he was destined for something great. My parents said I was smart. They said I'd find my people someday. I nodded and stared at my laptop screen for hours, coding games no one would ever play. No one asked what I wanted to be. No one thought I'd make it out. Sometimes, neither did I. I hadn't been back to my hometown in almost 8 years. Not really. A few rush visits around the holidays, a funeral for my uncle, once when Mom needed help moving a dresser. But nothing that made me stay long enough to feel anything. When the invite came for the 10-year high school reunion, I wasn't planning on going. It sat in my inbox for a week. Then my wife found it. She thought it was cute. "You should go," she said. "Show off a little." I laughed. I wasn't the show-off type. But something about it stuck in my head. Maybe I wanted to see who'd still call me Space Boy. Maybe I wanted to see Clara. Or maybe I just wanted proof that it all really happened. That I wasn't still dreaming about a town where I didn't matter. So I went. I rented a car, drove back alone, got a cheap hotel near the highway. The gymnasium looked the same, sweaty, too bright, still smelling faintly of cheap floor polish and nostalgia. Everyone had aged in weird ways. Some looked the same with a few extra pounds. Others looked like divorced dads from sitcoms. I recognized faces but not names. No one recognized me. At least, not at first. Then someone said, "Is that Alex Parker?" And suddenly there were hands on my shoulder, people telling me I looked different, or successful, or like you escaped. Which I did. And they knew it. Derek was there. Same smirk, but duller around the edges. He wore a button-up and jeans that tried too hard. He saw me and gave me that look, half nod, half memory. "Damn," he said. "You really went full tech bro, huh?" I smiled. Didn't take the bait. He asked what I did. I gave the short version. Startup. Sold it. Semi-retired. Doing small projects now. He whistled. Figures. You were always smart as hell. It sounded like a compliment, but I felt the edge underneath. I asked how he was. He shrugged. You know. Life. Later that night, I caught him watching me. Not angrily. Not even bitter. Just watching. I left early. On the way out, someone slapped my back and said, "You showed them, man." I smiled, but it didn't feel like anything. 2 days later, Derek showed up in my driveway. I decided to stay a few extra days after the reunion. Just a few. My parents had a spare room, the kind with old blankets and too many framed cross-stitch quotes. They were happy to have me, kept trying to feed me like I was still 16. I figured I'd work remotely, clean out some boxes in the attic, pretend for a moment that this town didn't make my skin itch the way it used to. On the second afternoon, I was out front watering the hedge when a familiar truck pulled up, rusted, off balance, the same one I'd seen in the high school parking lot 2 nights earlier. I squinted. Then Derek stepped out. No big entrance. Just a, "Hey man," like we bumped into each other at a gas station. "Hope I'm not interrupting." I blinked. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon." He nodded toward the porch. "Mind if I sit?" I didn't say no. He sat on the top step, knees apart, elbows on his thighs like he was waiting for a bad diagnosis. "Look," he said after a minute, "I know this is weird. I wouldn't show up if it wasn't serious." I didn't speak. Just waited. He told me his hours got cut. His ex was threatening to take him to court. His car needed repairs. Rent was overdue. Parents were tapped out. He looked up at me and said, "I'm just trying to keep my kid fed, man. I'm not asking for a handout. Just a loan. $5,000. I'll pay you back, I swear." He looked older in that moment. Not in the way time makes you old, but in the way life does when it doesn't let up. I should have said I'd think about it. Should have waited, asked questions. But I didn't. I said, "Okay." That night, I drove to the ATM, took out the max, brought it back in an envelope. Handed it to him under the porch light like we were making a drug deal. He looked stunned. "I didn't think you'd actually." "I mean, thank you." I nodded. "It's a loan," I said. "Not a gift." "Yeah. Of course." He stood there for a second longer, then said, "You turned out alright, man. Like, really alright." Then he left. I stood on the porch long after he drove off, wondering if he meant it, or if he just knew exactly what to say. He texted me 5 weeks later. Just, "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering. Then I typed, "What's going on?" He called. No hello, no small talk. Just launched straight in. His job had let him go. Something about a warehouse closure, not enough hours, bullshit promises. His voice was tighter than before, more clipped, like he was angry at me for not knowing this already. He said he'd been trying to get by. Said the money I gave him helped, but now it was gone, and he didn't know what else to do. I asked about his parents. He said they couldn't help. I asked about child support. He said his ex was threatening lawyers again. Then came the ask, cleaner this time, more direct. "Could I maybe borrow a little more? Just something to get through the month. Just until I figure it out." I sat there staring at the floor of my apartment. I'd already moved back to the city. His voice sounded far away now, like it belonged to someone calling in from a dream I didn't want to remember. I told him no. Not this time. He was quiet for a second. Then he laughed, bitter. "Figures," he said. "Knew it was too good to last. Guess that's what I get for asking the rich guy." And just like that I felt it. The shift. The resentment. The story flipping in his head. I wasn't the kid with braces anymore. I was the villain now, the guy with options, withholding them. I took a breath. "I'm not going to send you money," I said. "But I have an idea. Something real." I'd been quietly planning a small business in my hometown. A side project. Something grounded. I wanted to invest in a coffee shop/community hub. I didn't need it to make millions. I just wanted to build something where I came from. You want stability? I said. Come work for me. I'll pay you fair. You'll have hours structure. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, You're offering me a job? I am. Another pause. What would I even do? Whatever needs doing. Starting small. But if you show up, I'll show up too. He didn't say yes. But 2 days later, I got another message. I'm in. I took a 6-month sabbatical from my main job to focus on the new business. My wife was on board. We both liked the idea of giving our son a slower summer, time with grandparents, a backyard with grass instead of traffic. We moved into my parents' guest room with boxes and optimism, thinking we'd build something small and steady. The cafe was a rehabbed mechanics garage at the edge of downtown. We called it The Switch. Coffee, books, community events, good lighting, no bullshit. I funded it myself. Every screw, every chair, every espresso machine. It wasn't about the money. It was about proving I could shape something that mattered in a place where I once didn't. Derek started 2 weeks after we opened. He wore the wrong shoes and didn't ask any questions. The first day he showed up 20 minutes late. Said traffic. The next, he left early. Said his kid had a thing. I didn't push. I figured he was adjusting. But the excuses kept coming. One day he forgot to unlock the front door. Another day he left the fridge open overnight and spoiled half the milk. I didn't yell. I gave him reminders. Clear feedback. He nodded through all of it with that same look, like I was trying to win a game he didn't know we were playing. My wife told me to be patient. He's trying, she said. Not everyone starts where you did. But I didn't start anywhere easy. I started in a basement with dial-up and no one to talk to. Meanwhile, people around town began to notice. Old classmates came in, saw me wiping down counters, and raised eyebrows. One guy from school, Tyler, I think, came in and said, loud enough for the barista to hear. Didn't think I'd see Derek working for you. That's wild. A few others joked about it, not maliciously, but enough that it got back to me. That maybe I was flexing too hard. That maybe Derek looked like my pity project. I started to feel it too. The shift. Like I wasn't allowed to succeed in peace. Like helping someone came with a price, and the currency was guilt. One night, I asked Derek to restock the paper goods. He sighed and said, You know, I didn't sign up to be your assistant. I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't joking. That was the moment I realized, he didn't think he worked for me. He thought I owed him this. For what, I still don't know. But I smiled and said, You signed up to work. This is the job. He didn't argue. But he didn't say sorry either. Just walked into the back room and let the doors swing hard behind him. The break-in happened Wednesday before dawn. I got the call at 5:12 a.m. Someone had shattered the front window, forced the lock, trashed the register counter, and done just enough damage to make it personal. They didn't take much, a few hundred in bills and change from the drawer, some syrups, a speaker from the back. But they destroyed things that couldn't be easily replaced, our storefront decal, the menu board, and worst of all, the espresso machine. The La Marzocco. The one I said I'd never buy unless I believed in something. They cracked the control panel trying to force it open. It was worthless now. We had a backup, a small manual model I kept out of nostalgia. You could still make a decent shot on it if you had time. We didn't. I spent the morning with cops who asked standard questions and took vague notes. No cameras had a good angle. It looked like whoever did it knew where to avoid being seen. The place reeked of cleaning chemicals and broken sugar glass. At 6:45, Chris, one of our baristas, showed up for opening shift. He walked in, stood in the middle of the wreckage, didn't say a word. After a few minutes, he handed me his key. I'm sorry, he said. I can't. I've got another offer, and you know how this looks. I did. He left without looking back. By noon, Jess hadn't shown up. No texts. Nothing. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I figured she just bailed. 2 weeks later, I'd learned she took a bus to Miami the day before the break-in. One of the regulars said they saw her flirting with a guy in the shop late Tuesday night. Could have been nothing. Could have been him. Police asked if I had any financial disputes with her. She was in debt. Behind on rent. They didn't say it, but I could feel the angle: small cafe, little cash, angry employees, inside job? I didn't believe it. But I also didn't know. And then there was Tara. Her son had spiked a fever on Monday. She'd called out for the week. Texted once, then went quiet. I didn't blame her. But that left just me and Derek on Thursday. We couldn't open the front, glass everywhere. Couldn't use the big machine. Could barely keep up. So we pivoted. Stripped down the menu. Only served to go. Slow drinks. Apologies. No music, no chairs, no charm. Just survival. Derek didn't complain. He worked the register, cleaned the back, made drinks with shaky hands and no attitude. When I told him we'd need to close Friday if parts didn't come in, he said, "Then I'll come in anyway." I nodded. Didn't thank him. Didn't need to. We were past that now. By Friday morning, I'd mentally drafted the shutdown post 3 times. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even my wife, but I'd already looked at what the espresso machine might sell for, how to freeze the LLC, how to walk away clean. There was still money in the budget, sure. But emotionally? I was cooked. I couldn't shake the feeling that this town was trying to spit me out again, just slower this time. I showed up early, figuring I'd mop what I could and start quietly closing the week. But when I pulled up at 6:50, the lights were already on. Derek was inside. He brought his own mop from home, the one with the orange handle we used to see on his porch as kids. He didn't say anything dramatic. Just nodded and said, "Front's clean." I swept the sidewalk too. Figured we could open a bit early. The espresso parts still hadn't come, but the manual machine held up. We adjusted. Used the timer app. Cut the drink menu again. Built a makeshift counter out of crates and plywood. Derek reprinted the menus at Kinko's that morning and taped them to the walls himself. I started calling it the comeback setup. He smirked. Sounds like a band name. We worked through the weekend. No one else came. It was just the two of us, running like we had a full staff and something to prove. Customers started trickling back in. Some regulars. Some just curious. One lady said, "I thought you guys were done." I smiled and said, "Almost. But not quite." Derek stayed past close each day. Took the trash out, wiped every surface twice, fixed the leaky sink on Saturday without telling me. On Sunday, he borrowed a friend's truck, picked up a second-hand fridge someone donated, and installed it himself. We didn't talk about what had happened. Didn't mention the missing staff, the police questions, or the money. We just worked. Monday morning, I walked in to find him training a kid I'd seen in the crowd once. Quiet, polite. Derek had written out steps for the drink menu in a spiral notebook. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "You said you needed someone? So I found someone." I looked at him, hair clean, shirt tucked in, eyes sharp. He looked like a manager. No, not like one. He was one. The old Derek would have bragged. Laughed. Pretended like he was doing me a favor. This version just handed me a clean rag and said, "We're low on lids." And somehow, that meant everything. 3 months later, the cafe was busier than ever. We'd repainted the walls, replaced the glass, upgraded the second machine instead of fixing the first. It turned out the manual one forced us to learn rhythm, attention, patience, things we probably wouldn't have built otherwise. Regulars came back. New ones found us. Someone started calling us the broken shop that didn't break. We leaned into it. It worked. I hired a part-time events manager. We started open mic nights. A kid from the local high school now sells his zines on the back shelf. We're not changing the world, but we became part of something again. Derek never missed a shift. He was early more days than I was. He handled scheduling, vendor calls, inventory. At some point, without ceremony, I stopped calling him a guy who helps, and started introducing him as our manager. And when my wife and I had to leave town for 5 days for a family emergency, I handed him the keys. That used to be unimaginable. When I came back, the place was spotless. He'd hired a dishwasher, printed new loyalty cards, and left a note on my desk that just said, "Handled." That night, we locked up together and stood out back watching the sunset drip down the alley walls. I said, "Did you ever think you'd end up here?" He laughed. "Not a chance in hell. You could run your own place now." I said, "You know that, right?" He shrugged. "Maybe. But this feels like the first thing I didn't screw up." We stood there for a long moment. Two guys who hadn't spoken in high school beyond hallway jokes. Two guys who somehow built something, brick by brick, from everything we both thought we'd lost. A few weeks later, someone tagged me in a post on the reunion page. A photo from our 10-year. The caption said, "Wild that the guy who was voted most likely to marry a cheerleader now works for the kid we thought was invisible." I showed it to Derek. He read it. Smirked. "They're wrong, you know." "About what?" I asked. He looked out the window. "You did marry a cheerleader." I laughed. "Yeah. Just not from here." He grinned. "Figures." Then added quieter, "Also, I don't work for you anymore. We work together." And for the first time in my life, I realized he wasn't trying to prove anything. He just meant it. And he was right. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.